the episode. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share the video if you can. For those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the audio-only platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review if you can. All that stuff helps with the algorithms. Let's get into the preview then, Johns. Arsenal versus Man United. I believe it's on Sunday for both us here in the UK and also yourself in China. But it'll be Saturday in the US. It's a bit of a tough one to predict or give a bit of a preview for, because obviously pre-season. I think last year we played in pre-season as well. It had no bearing on the actual games in the Premier League when we played each other. But it's a good idea of what teams we might be going for. Obviously, I think this time it might be harder to predict because a lot of our players will be still on holiday because of the Euros and Copa. Last season, I do think it gave a good idea of who would be playing in the first team, because I think Kobe played in that game. There were some patterns of play that I think weren't executed well by United, but I think you could see were tried to implement throughout the season. But yeah, first of all, how do you think the game will go, and how do you think the teams will line up?
I think the game will be competitive. So I think even though it's a friendly, even though it's in America, I think actually they will try and put out a strong team. It kind of sets precedent for the rest of the campaign for the year. We've got Liverpool like the Thursday after that as well. So, I mean, we've got 2 good games back to back, and we're going to want to set a precedent that we are still better than both of those teams. And so I think from that point of view, you'll see strong lineups on both sides. I don't think it will be necessarily full strength. I'm not saying that you're going to see a full starting 11 that you probably see start in the Premier League. I think there will be some tests here and there for new players coming in and for some young players. But I think you will see a core of the kind of mainstays of that team. I think in terms of how the game will go, I can't really call it at this point, right? Because it's, friendly games in the summer are always weird ones, right? You can end up having the weirdest results where a team gets absolutely battered and then goes on to be really good in the actual Premier League season afterwards. So I can't really call it, but just being an Arsenal fan and, the fact that Man United have probably got quite a few different kind of new things they want to test out, I'm going to go that Arsenal are going to win this 2-0. And I think we're going to try and put on a show for the Americans. Obviously, they're trying to get bloody Premier League games to go over there now. So I hope it's not too good of a show. I hope it's somewhat boring at least, so that you're like, actually, you know what? You can keep football in England. We don't want it. But yeah, I'm going to go with an Arsenal 2-0 win.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in terms of the lineup and the strength of the team. I think you've obviously got quite a few players that weren't actually involved. So you've got your Odegaards, your Parteys. Quite a lot of those guys have been in training now already since beginning of July or mid-July or whenever pre-season started. So I do think in the end you'll get a fairly strong lineup on both sides. I think they're probably also somehow contractually obliged to put out some of their first teamers. I'm sure that's part of the contract for all these pre-season games. I think, do you remember that game where was it PSG or something went out to China and they didn't play Messi and the fans went absolutely apeshit? So I'm sure that, it's part of it. It must, we must see X amount of.
I think in China they were literally trying to say you can't come again unless you can guarantee all of your, your first team are going to play. I don't know if it'll be quite that severe in the contract for America, but I imagine they're going to at least have some of their key players out there. So
yeah, I'm sure that's involved.
You'll see some big names for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's involved in it. So I'm sure both sides will line up as strong as they can. I think the key word is the keywords are as they can, because obviously both clubs are missing some of their first teamers, as I said before. So I do think that will mean it'll probably be a game of 2 halves. Most likely the first half you'll see as full strength as you can, and it'll probably be really competitive. And the second half will be the joker, because you'll probably see both teams will make mass changes. A lot of young players will come on, and I think then it's a crapshoot. You don't know what will happen. And that's generally when you get some of those kind of crazy results in pre-season, when you've got, a bunch of young players playing on both sides, and there's a bit of a disparity in the levels. So I think it'll be an interesting game. I'm definitely going to try and tune in if I can. if I can stay awake that late on the Sunday morning, because I do think it'll be. I don't think it'll be an indication, like you said. We've both had pre-seasons where we've either been stinking it up and performing poorly, or the opposite, performing amazingly, and that has no bearing on the season. So I don't think it will be a huge indicator on how the season will go. I do think the style of play, patterns of play thing will probably be the only thing to be super interesting, though, because I think regardless of the personnel, both Arteta and Ten Hag will look to play a certain style of football that they're probably going to want to implement in the season. So it'll be good from a tactico standpoint as to how the game goes. But I'm going to go for 2-1 Man United, but I think it will be probably a case of the second half swinging it one way or the other, either bringing Arsenal back into the game or winning the game on that side, or the opposite for United. Because I think second half you'll see all of our youngsters. I'm sure we'll see all of your youngsters, and it'll be quite hard to predict. But I think it'll be good. I do like this pre-season setup where you're actually playing proper teams, because I think you've mentioned it on previous pods where pre-season you'd go out and you'd play a bunch of, I don't know, MLS All-Stars and all these kind of players, and these teams where it's not really benefiting our club, right? In terms of competitive football. I do think you've been dealt a bit of a tough hand playing Arsenal and Liverpool in pre-season, though, because I do think that might swing it to the other side where you actually want to have a blend of difficulty and styles, etc. And if you're just playing a bunch of Premier League teams, I think there's a bit of cat and mouse with playing those big teams, because you might not want to show your hand completely. But for the spectators, I'm sure it'll be good. But yeah, I agree with you. I really hope there's not a 39th game in bloody Dallas or Atlanta in the future, because we don't want to Americanize football too much. But I do think it's good for the foreign fans, right? Like, I hope they don't just do this every year, because it seems like every year they go to America. I hope they switch up sometimes, go out to China again, go to Japan, Korea, because it does seem to be a bit premeditated now. So Arsenal, United, Liverpool tend to always go to America now, and or predominantly go to America, and then your Tottenhams go out to Korea and Japan, where they, obviously Son and all that, they have a big fan base. So it would be nice to see them mix around a bit and give the foreign fans in all the different areas a chance to see their teams. Because if you are based in Beijing, when the hell are you going to be able to see Man United or Arsenal? Otherwise, you're going to have to make the trip. So it is good for the foreign fans to be able to see their teams, and hopefully it's a good game, and hopefully United win. And yeah, it's at least a good opportunity for us to see some of our young players and new signings, because I do think Yoro will probably get 45 minutes again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your youngsters and our youngsters will get a good chance at a run.